I'm Mary Davis, and I'm the guest host of this edition of Women Who Love with Wisdom and Power. It's a video summit that's put on by We Evolve TV. And today I have the great pleasure of interviewing the founder of We Evolve TV and the hostess of this video summit, Medea Bavarella Chechik. And I'm so excited to be interviewing you, Medea, today.
It's so lovely, Mary. I'd say it's really exciting to be interviewed by you. Like we're
And I'm so impressed with you and with all of your gifts, because Medea is a feminine power coach. She's a transformational psychotherapist. As I mentioned, she's the hostess of this video summit and of the talk show We Evolve TV. And she's also a writer and a poet, and I love her poetry. It's so beautiful.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I just wanted to ask you, because I know the theme of this video summit is all about empowerment and going from catalyzing your empowerment from the place of being a victim. And I wanted to ask you, what was the deepest experience that you had of victimization in your life, and how did you come out of that and become this empowered co-creator of your life?
Okay, so let me start by saying that first of all, that I'm going to be talking about empowerment, self-empowerment, and I want to make sure that we know the self-empowerment, it's not only what I'm going to be talking about applies to women, it applies to women and men as well, but I'm going to be talking about it from the perspective of the feminine, because it's within the context of the summit, Women Who Love with Wisdom and Power, Catalyze Your Transformation from Victim to Empowered Co-Creator. So I just wanted to say that, make sure we're not excluding men. This is a universal process. This is the process of evolution of consciousness, of human consciousness. And I am going to be talking about it from the perspective, from a spiritual, psychological perspective, because that is my background. That is what I'm talking about. And let me just say first about my understanding, given my own experience, as well as my many years of working with, of training in psychotherapy, coaching, and working, facilitating groups, primarily women, but I work with men as well. There are some prerequisites, for self-empowerment. And also to keep in mind that this is not just, it is a personal process, but it's bigger than that, because this is a process that we're all inside of. It is a collective global transformation and evolution of the human consciousness that when we talk about empowerment. And basically, within the context of the work that I do, and self-empowerment is achieved when, what it really means is when it's a shift from how we experience ourselves, how we identify. That's why the feminine power coaching is really a transformation of self-identity, because it is really how we see ourselves. And usually we see ourselves from the limited self, the ego self, the local self, which is really the self that it was the product of all our beliefs and all patterns that derived as a result of our own early life circumstances. And so we're shifting from that identity into really who we truly are, which is really experiencing and identify ourselves as our deepest truth, as really an aspect, an extension of divine intention, localized as me.
That is so beautiful, Medea.
Yes. And in the words of Barbara Max Hubbard, she calls it the shift from ego to essence. So that really encapsulates what what we're all here doing. And right now, as part of our own this evolutionary transformation, so we're shifting from who we think we are, which is most of us, we start from, seeing ourselves as this limited self, into really who we really are. Again, in the words of Barbara Max Saber, an extension, an expression of the great creative process of life itself. And so transformation, truly true power, true empowerment happens when we are ready, when we're willing to shift from the limitations of the past, and we're moving beyond that. And when we're able to take the stance of radical self-responsibility. Self-responsibility, basically what it means that to inquire into how we are contributing, what is the role that we play in the experiences that we have. Because
can I just stop you there, because I'm really curious about how you have done this for yourself in your own
coming
life.
There. I'm coming
there. Oh, beautiful, wonderful.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I've been doing this work for over 30 years. And when I say this work, I'm talking about my own personal growth and transformation, because I've worked on myself a lot. And also I've learned how, I've done a lot of work, training and explorations. I've done so much work into how I can help other people. And I've been doing that, both men and women, groups, for the last 25 years. And so this is something that I recognize that it was already within the blueprint of my own self when I was born. Because I remember as a child, I sensed that there was something more to life than what everybody was seeing. So as a child, I was always looking for something more. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of human? That's why I'm a graduate of philosophy major.
You always had that kind of inquisitive mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was already into this path of self-transformation and empowerment. And I think, to answer your question, the greatest catalyst for me personally in my own process was as a result of a very traumatic experience. I said traumatic because in a way it's putting it a little bit lightly, that I experienced about six years ago, which is really the loss of my son. I lost my son, my only son. And it was unexpected, so it was a bit of a shock. And I remember that experience, and a lot of times, in some people, the experience of transformation, of evolution, the shift happens due to a traumatic experience that we have in life. And so in my case, I was already on that path, but that experience, it was kind of like, it was what catapulted me into this major, leap. Because that experience of losing my son and the grief that I went through, it kind of created a shift in my own sense of self, how I experienced myself, because the shock and the grief and the pain of losing him was like it created a little bit of a separation from my ego self.
Wow.
Yes, it's kind of like everything that I knew as myself, everything that I thought I knew, everything that I learned, everything it just didn't mean anything anymore. So there was a period of time where it was almost like I didn't know who I was, but I was conscious of it, of course, because everything that I experienced didn't mean anything anymore. So there was that period where I was able to access access another part of myself, a deeper, more expanded part of myself, because my personality self I couldn't relate to that anymore. And so it was like everything, so it was like, it's like, who am I really? What does it mean? How do I put this experience in the context of who I am in my life? So there was this inquiry into wanting into what does it all mean? Like, why this loss? Why did I have to lose my son? Why did it happen? And I remember when it first happened, on my way to to the hospital, where with the ambulance, when we were taking him to the hospital, it was like I turned to the highest, and I said, why? Like, how could this happen? It was like, no, it was more like this reaction, this resistance, like, no, how could you make this happen? But on the way back at 4:00 in the morning, it was like, okay, if this really had to happen, I realized that the only way I can accept it if I find the highest purpose.
Wow.
So I put it already right away into, like, I need to understand, I need to process this experience, this loss, through the filters, more like the deeper spiritual understanding of it. And so because I made that intention, it really, I didn't understand it at that time, but it really propelled me into searching this higher meaning and purpose. And then, of course, the highest purpose and meaning was really me, was my own understanding of myself in relation to life, in relation to creation, in relation to everything. And so then the search into the deeper meaning.
Wow, Medea, that's so beautiful. And what I'm hearing you say is this experience that for many people could have been this real tragedy that took them deeper into this sense of victimization, that you very consciously moved through it right from the beginning, from when your son actually passed, that you were communicating with your higher power to really get a deeper understanding of the experience.
Because it was like just thinking that, okay, this is just, there's no, just death. It just happened. It wasn't good enough for me. No, it's because even within that trauma and that shock, I knew that there was a deeper meaning. Just like now, in my life, and this is part of it, going back into empowerment, and also is how I facilitate and teach, other people, my clients, is to see ourselves always as the source of our experience. Like I was saying before, how do we, part of empowerment, taking this stance of radical self-responsibility. And so what happened, I don't see that what happens, it happens to me. Just was the very beginning when I went to the hospital. It's like, I was like, oh, this is something that happened to me.
Right.
Life took my son away from me. I'm the victim here. Into, on the way back, let's say, no, wait a minute. I'm not going to be the victim of this. I want to understand this. And I wanted to process it through a deeper and higher meaning.
Wow.
So it enabled me to already move out of it was very excruciatingly painful, the process that I went through. So let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
For the first 6 months, it was very, very difficult. I remember, again, I wasn't even sure where I was going, and I couldn't even see the future for me. And then at some point I had to make a conscious choice and say, I want to live.
Wow.
Because I realized that I have a higher purpose, and then I'm still fulfilling my higher purpose. And perhaps the loss of my son is part of this larger purpose. I may not understand it now consciously, cognitively, but intuitively, again, to that deeper feminine, intuition, in that deeper knowing, I knew it. And as a matter of fact, I have a different relationship now with the loss of my son. I mean, sometimes it's still sad, of course. It's still, but I see that he's free now. He's and actually I feel like he's one of my guides, really.
That's so beautiful.
And a lot of people have said that. But anyway, so it's the context is wanting to. So one of the cores of empowerment is that we, as I said, we're shifting in experiencing ourselves as this deeper sense of self.
Right.
And
beyond what happens to us is what I'm hearing you say. Beyond what happens to us.
Yes, so that we're not responding to circumstances of life, to crisis, to issues, to breakdowns, to conflicts as, oh, it's happening to me, because that's the old paradigm of seeing or experiencing ourselves and identify ourselves as victim of people, of life, or circumstances, but actually having another stance, another response, like saying, okay, this is happening and it's painful, it's difficult, it's challenging, but why is it happening? What is the higher purpose?
Right.
What is the lesson here? That question, what is, or in feminine power is what is the deepest truth? Another way of asking. Is directing us in the direction of looking at it from the perspective of empowering ourselves, because then if I understand what the lesson is, then I can integrate that, and that will add something to me, that will expand me even more, that will grow, that will allow me to grow.
I love that, Medea, and I have to say you're really inspiring, and I've always felt that since I first met you, and then I heard your story, and I just think it's amazing how you were able to move so consciously through such a traumatic event, and the inspiration for all those other women out there in being able to model this other way of relating to life.
Yes.
And so how can women, how can we kind of maintain this way of being in the world so that we're staying in our empowered self, so that we're continuing in our lives as empowered co-creators?
Yes. So as I said, I'm going to be talking about it within the context of a feminine perspective, and also within the context of the work that I do, which more recently it is the feminine power coaching. And so from that perspective, within the context, is in a way it's understanding that when we're responding to life, which includes when we're responding to other people, the full spectrum relationship, is there are only two places where we can respond from inside of us. Well, one is more like a reactive stance, which is in feminine power is using the terms of false center identity, which what I was saying before, it's more like the old paradigm, the old way of identifying or experiencing ourselves as limited, which is really it's a concept, is an idea of who we are, based on or culture, based on our religious background, or our upbringing, or the beliefs and the patterns that were the results of those circumstances.
Right.
Which may seem real to us because that's all we know, but they're not real, because as I said, they are just a conceptual understanding, an idea of who we are. They're not the direct experience of who we are. So in this work, in the work that I do, is guiding and helping women to make the shift and starting to experience themselves, but finding it within themselves in very experiential terms, very somatic, because it is a way that we can understand it somatically in our body, start to identify into power center, which is we're responding to life from the deeper truth of who we are, of identify ourselves as an aspect, an extension of source, and then starting to practice how to become co-creator. That's why from victim to empower co-creator, because life, we need life, but we need God, we need divine mother, we need source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, and vice versa. Life needs us. We are having an experience as human being. So life needs us to be conduit, to become, to manifest, the spiritual, the formless in form.
I love that.
So we are co-creating with life. We're not this. So it's like, Barbara Max Hubbard talks about it, that we are becoming through this conscious evolution. We are becoming gods and goddesses. Isn't that beautiful?
It is gorgeous.
It's kind of like
lovely.
saying people know it. We have known it. We read about it, in books, in history. But now we're actually doing it. We're experiencing it. We're embodying it. And this has nothing to do with ego. This has not. That's why it's like when we know it, when we have that direct experience, then it's kind of like we see that we're all here. We're on the same, we're all in the same experience. So we're all, you have that essence inside of you, that potential. So do I. So does everybody else. So it's like so that's why I said this is initially at the beginning, that this is a collective, a global evolutionary transformation that we're going to consciously, because for the first time, we are conscious of our own evolution.
That seems to be the key, is
Yes,
this
conscious.
whole thing of, and it's the theme that runs as a thread through everything you've said, right from your description of your experience of going through the loss of your son, is really being conscious of this greater potential we have within us. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, how do we stay kind of connected to that inner truth? And I think about things like, how does this empowerment, how does it relate to issues like self-love for women in particular, and also to having these healthy boundaries that so many of us women sometimes struggle with having?
Yes, and it all goes back to what I was saying. Remember, is the shift from who we think we are into who we truly are. But again, when we are shifting into who we truly are, it's not a conception, it's an embodied experience. It's an embodiment of this truth. And so once we start identifying and experiencing ourselves and responding to life from power center, then we create, then there are new ways of being, new ways of how, in feminine power, it's called the 3 power centers. And the foundational one is how we relate with ourselves. So in the old paradigm of victimization, we don't really have a very conscious relationship or loving relationship with ourselves. As a matter of fact, most of us, and this is what I see in the people that I work with, we don't even have a relationship with ourselves because it's all conceptual, it's all in our head, but we're not. So we operate primarily into the concepts that we've learned, and I see it even in spiritual, more evolved people. But really, the empowerment comes from when we drop deeper inside of ourselves and we discover the less evolved parts of ourselves. Now, in psychotherapy, we use terms like more unconscious part of ourselves, the shadow selves. In feminine power, Barbara Max Hubbard call it the local selves. In feminine power, we call it, younger, less evolved self, is the parts of us that, as I said before, that we, as we were growing up, what we learned, especially if we experienced it, and who hasn't experienced pain, hasn't experienced abuse or some form, some level of trauma, or of course there are different degrees, and so those experiences really have such a strong impact on us, and through those experiences we created beliefs about ourselves. So let's say, I'm going to give an example. If as a growing up as a child, a girl, and even in men, in these cases, if one of our parents is not behaving like like a beautiful, loving, supportive parent for whatever reason, a lot of us as children, then we interpreted that whatever we experienced was, it had to do, it was due because of something in us.
Yeah.
A deficit in us, or it was our fault, or like in me, it's like, oh my God, my father was like this, he did this and did that. It was my fault. It must be because I wasn't lovable enough. Because if I had been lovable enough, my father wouldn't have been the way he was.
Right.
That's a child rationale.
Yeah.
It's a younger, less mature perspective. And so that kind of like, because as children, we try to make meaning out of our circumstances. But unfortunately, if we don't have any positive or any mature modeling, or an adult that teaches us, tells us, okay, this has nothing to do with you, whatever's happening with the adults around you, the circumstances, we don't know that. And again, it's a default mechanisms that we take it upon ourselves. And so what we derive become our own core belief system or core belief. So one of my core beliefs, for example, was I'm not lovable. Right?
And how many of us have that?
Exactly.
Probably many of us.
Oh yeah, that is. Yeah. There are standard core beliefs that we share among ourselves, and this is one of the common ones. So if we see ourselves as that, then we are experiencing life through those filters. That's where the victimization comes in, because we're always seeing ourselves as, and we look for evidence out there that is going to perpetuate or is going to reinforce that belief.
Right.
Until we go inside our psyche, inside of ourselves, and we change it. That's where transformation happens, to realize that, oh my God, that's not true. So what is true? So when we keep on asking this question, and so when we empower ourselves by seeing that things are not done to us, but they come through us, then that's where we can we can consciously choose to create healthy and loving boundaries. Because a lot of times when we are operating from old patterns, if I believe myself as not being lovable, then I may move through my life in creating strategies on trying to figure out how to get love from other people.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a covert way of making up what I believe that I'm deficit. That I'm missing.
Yeah.
So it's like I want people to love me, so that then I'm not connected with myself. I'm out there searching out there. And of course we know now that whatever it is that we're wanting, self-love, it's not something that we get it from out there. It's something that we establish inside of ourselves. We love ourselves. So self-love, it's really understanding and discovering this, all parts of ourselves, and us, which is also how transformation starts, us learning how to love those parts of ourselves.
Beautiful.
Because it is love that is really the how we relate to ourselves is what initiates this transformation. Because if we don't love the parts of ourselves that were wounded and that have a false identity about themselves, how can we? Because transformation, it's another way of saying it. It's almost like is a mentoring. It's a re-educating of ourselves.
Oh, I love that, Medea. I love that concept of re-educating yourself.
Yeah, so it's like we become, so that's where, like I think it was the Mayans that say, we are the ones we've been looking for. So if we, all our lives have been looking for approval, for love, which is really the core, everything goes back to wanting to be loved. Because love is the foundation of creation, right? Is one of the, love, spirit, it's all the same. So we all want that. And if we don't, so this is how we discover, is by us saying, well, I am lovable.
That's
I
so
am like,
beautiful.
I see myself now. And it is not true that I'm not lovable because my father or whatever did this and that. I am lovable because I am an incredible human being, because I'm an expression, I'm an extension of the great creative process of life itself. So then our relationship with ourselves changes. We start honoring, we start respecting, we start, taking us into consideration, we start checking in and saying, you know what, what do I feel? Again, it's important to identify our feelings, our needs.
Yep.
That now our needs is not being needy, but because our needs, underneath our needs, there's deeper desires that want to come through. That one, right? So it's, again, we discover that by going inside. So again, the boundaries, So then we choose, like, okay, how do I want? So this is who I am. How do I treat myself? And so how I treat myself then it starts to become a new way of relating with ourselves, a new relationship. And so that then we extend it outwardly, we're radiating outwardly, so that then people respond to us that way. So for example, if we want to be respected or loved, we respect and love first.
That is so beautiful.
Right?
And I love everything that you've just shared with us. And I love how you've described that finding the core truth within ourselves and finding that sense of wholeness and the sense of completion within ourselves. And it's through that that we actually, as you said, we then shine that out into the world and we co-create more consciously the lives that we're meant to lead.
So this relationship with ourselves, it is an evolution of how we were relating with ourselves, which is more conscious, it's more understanding who we are, it's listening to who we are, it's discovering through processes that I teach, it's discovering, going really deep underneath whatever the issue is into discovering what the belief is, and then transforming over that and so that enables us to start relating with ourselves differently. And this is where we shift our identity. So this is where how we identify ourselves in the past as, we're not good enough, or we don't know ourselves. We were constantly looking out there into having this strong bond with ourselves that is based on self-love, self-respect. So it's a strong bond between the conscious part of ourselves and the more younger or unconscious, underdeveloped part of ourselves, so that this is the core of empowerment, is how we are standing inside of ourselves in this core bond within ourselves. And this then becomes the foundation of every relationship. The power base 2, which is the relationship with life, the relationship with the energy of life. How do we relate with that? How do we see ourselves again in this? Are we co-creating with life, or do we see that life is against us? Stuff like that, and then also the foundational relationship with others. And so again, it's the transform. So we're starting to identify ourselves as this new evolving being that recognizes itself and identifies itself with more of a core truth, more of that core sense, that core essence of who we are, which is having, because we're discovering, we're having this direct understanding, discovery who we are.
I love that, Medea. And I have to say, one of my favorite phrases that you said was that, and I think this kind of summarizes what you've just shared, is that it's really almost about recognizing that life isn't happening to us, it's coming through us. And that, to me, that phrase just summarizes the difference between living from that place of the victim as opposed to living as an empowered co-creator.
Yes.
And that's just beautiful.
So then when we start responding to life that way, it's like, okay, we're not wasting all our time and our energy into the story, what happens, into what's right, what was wrong, or why is this happening. Again, speculating from more preconceived ideas, from more beliefs, from more concepts, but it's having a direct experience. It's like, what does this really mean? Being willing to ask, what's coming through that is really the gift from me, or what I'm needing to learn, that is coming through the circumstances, or this breakdown, or this,
Yep.
because this is the question that we keep on asking ourselves. What is the deeper meaning of this?
Yep.
What is the truth about this? As opposed to just reacting, and even sometimes stopping, and going inside and connecting with that deeper center inside of ourselves, that power center, and saying, okay, right now I'm feeling pain. I'm feeling, I want to react. But I'm not going to do that, because that would be, it's almost like it's taking the opportunity away from myself, from understanding, from gaining the deeper meaning. And once we ask that question, and we really authentically, genuinely ask that question, the answer always comes.
How
So then we start saying, oh my God, that's where we are co-creating with life. Because
and so that's how we start gaining faith in the process too.
Yes. Right? Because faith doesn't come, it comes beforehand, like saying, I want to trust that there is a higher meaning to this.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to wait and discover it. And then the evidence comes afterwards.
That's beautiful. Medea, this has been so amazing. And
thank you, Mary.
I just, the richness of your teachings, what you have to share, and that it's so rooted in your own life experience, and that you really embody this. It's so evident to me.
Oh, thank you.
And it's just been a joy and a pleasure. And I want to ask you, is there any way that, anything you'd like to offer to your viewers as a way for them to receive some coaching with you? Anybody who's going through maybe a difficult situation that they'd like to shift into this position of feeling that they are empowered co-creators around?
Yes. For those who are really interested in experiencing this process of transformation of self-identity, I am offering an empowerment breakthrough session, a free 30 minutes phone breakthrough sessions to anyone who's experiencing any conflict, any breakdown, who would like to empower themselves on how to transform that situation.
That is so generous and wonderful. And I just want to thank you again for this incredible time we've had together. And I know that our viewers will feel this way as well, that this has been so inspiring to have this experience with Medea. And we've been speaking with Medea Bavarella Chechik today. And this is the final installment of the Women Who Love with Wisdom and Power Video Summit. And thank you, Medea, for hosting this incredible video summit.
You're well welcome. It's been such a great pleasure.
It's wonderful. And thank you for all of you for watching.
Thank you.